This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry, is brought to you by Case IH. Coming up on this weekend's broadcast, we're at the Farm Progress Show this weekend. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the broadcast from Boone, Iowa, the 2022 Farm Progress Show, where Mr. Pearson and I went around and kicked tires, saw the new equipment.
We sure did, Max. A lot on display.
And so many old friends, as a matter of fact.
Yes, we did. Had some great conversations.
It was interesting. There was a good representation from Washington here, a number of members of Congress and the cabinet officer who oversees agriculture.
That's right. A lot of curiosity about farmers' opinions in an election year.
Tom Vilsack went to the podium here to address farmers, talking about some new things they're going to offer at USDA, some climate smart money.
We announced a while back the opportunity for climate smart agriculture. We basically had listened to farmers and ranchers and producers all across the country. And what they said to us was, look, we're very interested in climate smart practices, but we would like to be able to do a series of pilots. We'd like to be able to figure out how to do this and do it well, but we need help. We need some assistance. And so we looked at ways in which we could use the Commodity Credit Corporation. We identified $1 billion from the Commodity Credit Corporation, and we asked the question, what would you do? We asked this of farmers, ranchers, and producers all across the country, agribusiness, food companies. What would you do? You know, I honestly thought we'd get 50 applications, maybe 100 applications. We ended up getting 1,050 applications. The $1 billion, the requests of those 1,000 applications was over $20 billion in requests. So it said to me that we really are onto something here. Our farmers, our ranchers are really interested in creating new revenue streams. They're interested in reducing their greenhouse gas input. They're interested in figuring out ways in which they can be more productive, they can improve soil health, they can improve water quality, they can improve livestock productivity.
Secretary of Agriculture Tom Vilsack sharing a message with farmers attending the Farm Progress Show, and several members of Congress were here too. So there was some fairly good representation of the Washington crowd, bipartisan as a matter of fact. I
That's
guess.
very true. A lot of folks curious in farmers' attitudes ahead of the election.
Matt Youngman helping host them here and overseeing the Farm Progress Show. You've got some great weather days. You had some superb weather for the show this week.
Fantastic. You know, it's very rare that you get 3 beautiful days like we've had this year, and you know, to have these big crowds for the first time back here in 4 years, we're, you know, really couldn't be more thrilled with the outcome.
You saw visitors from other countries, and we've had the chance to visit some. We'll share a little bit later on in the broadcast. The Brazilians came back in droves, the Argentinians, so a lot of folks from the Southern Hemisphere.
That is exactly right. You know, it was great to see those internationals come back, because we just didn't know how fast that was going to come back. I would say, you know, we kind of gauged it off World Pork Expo, which you know, they came back a bit. But here at the Farm Progress Show, especially as you mentioned, the Brazilians and Argentinians, there was a good showing from those folks.
Matt, what amazes me is each year at Farm Progress, there are so many new product unveilings, so many announcements. I've just seen a score of them here. Do you happen to keep track of how many new products get announced at Farm Progress?
It kind of runs. I can't keep track of all the new stuff that's going to be here. But the thing about that is that's what makes the Farm Progress Show new and fresh every year. It's not anything that we're really doing. I mean, we do things. We did the VIT asphalt, and that was a great addition in partnership with the Iowa Soybean. But the product unveilings and the things that the exhibitors do are what make the show fresh and make these folks come out in droves like they did this year.
And new exhibitors, companies that have never been here before. In fact, there was a gentleman came up to me and handed me his business card, and he said, we plan to come next year for the first time.
That's exactly right. You know, as companies are purchased and there's mergers and those kind of things happen, there's just about always 10% new folks on the exhibitor list that are replacing those numbers, and most of them are in that varied industry tent. The next great ideas dip their toe into the show with a 10x10 booth.
Talking about next great ideas, the Farm Next exhibit, I think, met the advanced publicity. It was really interesting not only to see these products, but the inventors there talking about what they've come forward with.
And that's exactly the kind of thing we were talking about, where the excitement to be able to, you know, this is something that they've poured their blood, sweat, and tears into to make this invention work, and to see them interacting with the growers and get the growers' reaction back here. It was a great opportunity for them to work on refining before they're really ready for the market.
I'm curious about the autonomous zone. Matt, you had 3 days of equipment running automatically, autonomously in the field. How did it go? What were the response from some of the people who saw it?
We got a big rain on Saturday night, and we were a little worried about that area out there, but we got some good sun on Monday, and everything kind of straightened up. And yeah, the whole time there was a huge announcement from Raven and Case IH, the first after the merger of those two companies, of them working together on a new product. So that unveiling was a big deal. And it's been out there running the whole time, along with an Iowa State autonomous machine and sprayer drones and the traditional ride and drives. Just a whole lot of action out there, and right next door to the floating tractor too.
It's interesting as you walk through some of these booths, you find there some of the engineers who help bring these products to market, and they want to hear what farmers have to say, don't they, Matt?
That's exactly right. At its core, this is a trade show for farmers, but there's a lot of other things going on. There are engineers who are coming to get opinions from farmers maybe that own the equipment and have some ideas on how to make it better. There's the politicians, there's Wall Street here, there's the international visitors, there's all of the ag media. There's just a lot going on that's interior to the industry in addition to the actual business of the farmers coming and learning.
And now you get to take a little break before you gear up and head west to Grand Island and Husker Harvest Days. Matt, you excited about that?
I am. Husker's a great show. I mean, we've been there for 45 years, and maybe if you got planted late and you're able to maybe make a bucket list trip, Husker and Grand Island, September 13th, 14th, and 15th.
Fantastic opportunity. Get your way out there if you can. World's largest irrigated show. I'm still going to be recovering from farm progress, all the walking, all of the excitement, and all of the education that came available. Certainly appreciate it. Matt Youngman, Farm Progress. This portion of This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Firestone Ag. The Firestone Ag Dealer Network offers you the support, inventory, and resources you need. Visit firestoneag.com to find your local certified dealer. And we're back. It's time to talk markets here on This Week in Agribusiness. And joining us here at the Farm Progress Show is Tommy Grisaffi of Advanced Trading. Tommy, the markets have been digesting Fed Chairman Jerome Powell's comments last Friday. Recession fears back in the news. Is that driving the markets?
Absolutely, Mike. And he said what he said, and he meant it, and it had an effect. And then they had other Federal Reserve folks give some chatter too. Our friend up in Minnesota just made everyone know, you heard what he said on Friday, he meant it. And as you look, the 2-year note, which is funny to talk about the 2-year note on the farm show, but the 2-year note hit 14-year highs today, 3.45 yield. So you have that inverted yield curve, which almost guarantees a recession, Mike.
Almost guarantees a recession, but we've also seen some breaks in input prices. Tommy, crude oil's come down substantially this week.
It did. Now, diesel's not coming down. On the Drive to Farm Progress show today, the national diesel average hit above $5 again. Now, that'll probably change in the next few days, but big down move in crude oil. Down $5 one day, down $3, steadied off towards the end of the week, but it's going to help energy prices. I imagine we'll trade down right into that midterm election as we're releasing all that oil out of the strategic oil reserve. And then, of course, we need to buy that oil back. So funny how that works, Mike.
It is, Tommy. And we've seen a lot of movements throughout the markets over this past month. I know you keep track of monthly price changes. Tommy, what did we see corn versus soybeans in the month of August?
Well, typically when people are speculators, spread trade, they buy 2 corn futures and sell 1 bean. Seeing corn up 60, 70 cents for the month and seeing beans down 60, 70 cents, that's that side effect from all the crop tours going around. The damage that's done is done in the corn market. You either have a bushel of corn at this point and it's getting better, or it could even be getting a little worse. But soybeans, still a lot of potential. Caught a great rain here at the end of August, couple September rains. Let's hope for our friends up in North Dakota we don't hear the frost word. That would be nasty. So let's keep it warm. Let's get a few more rains, and let's grow a big bean crop. We're going to need them all, Mike.
We are, Tommy. We're also seeing strong demand on the corn front as you look out at the end of summer, early fall. Corn demand look to stay strong?
Yeah, what's happening when you look at corn futures is that all the months are trading the same price. December's the same price as March. March the same price as July. Typically, we're talking about inverses or carries and all this fun stuff. So all that leaves left to talk about is the actual cash market. Are you going to sell at a negative basis during harvest pressure? You're going to store those bushels and hope for that cash market to rally, Mike.
Well, what do you think, Tommy? Should we be selling the board here heading into this harvest, or should growers be sitting back, especially if they're concerned about production?
Well, there's two types of people. Like you had said, how are the good folks in northern Indiana? I said they have a record crop. But as you know, in this crowd, there's folks who aren't that lucky. Mother Nature is large and in charge. If you don't have the bushels, you're more in a crop insurance scenario. You're probably going to be able to store everything you've grown. People who are blessed to grow a lot of bushels, it's okay. Sell them off the combine, but let's buy it back on paper, as us commodity brokers love to do. Let's get a call owned or a call spread if you're into that type of thing. But I wouldn't want to own the whole crop. The outright price could be very scary, but we know the world needs our corn, but we're going to have fluctuations and volatility in between.
That is a great point, Tommy, and it's one we're going to come back to in the second segment. We've got strong demand. The question is supply and what's it going to do for prices. Tommy Grizzoffi of Advanced Trading will be back for more after this. This portion of This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Firestone Ag. Harvey Firestone invented the first pneumatic farm tire, forever changing what it means to farm hard. Visit firestoneag.com to learn more about this history and tire solutions for today. We're back talking markets with Tommy Grizzoffi of Advanced Trading. And Tommy, we are seeing some questions arise about this soybean crop yield as we push toward harvest. You mentioned those big rains we saw across some of the Corn Belt. What's your guess on soybean yield this year nationwide?
We're starting to inch up in the upper 51s, 52. That would be wonderful because I think we have the demand. Don't be scared to grow a big crop. There's someone who wants to buy it, and they'd rather not pay $17. So we're right in that sweet spot of price, $14. We shoot up to 15, we shoot back down. But hey, if you grew a record soybean crop at $14, those numbers work. Now, people are excited about corn, but if you don't have the corn bushels, does it really matter? So we're in the bushel business. We love to help people with bushels, and we got to be in the bushel business. I think things look good for soybeans. A lot of optimism.
As we think about soybeans, of course, it's the bushel business on the beans, but then it's the pound business on the products. We're selling soybean meal. We've got soybean oil. Tommy, bean oil has been quite a topic of conversation here at Farm Progress. Where do you see that market headed as we get through the fall and into early spring next year?
Yeah, it's interesting. Keep an eye on canola. Also watch how much canola we grow. Our friends in Canada actually got to plant a crop in North Dakota and a lot of canola going. But again, we're used to thinking and talking, oh, we planted a lot, we have a big yield, prices are going to tank. We're forgetting about this newfound demand. I listen to all types of podcasts and shows, and they're talking about things I didn't even know exist. So what we're going to do with soybean oil and oil products in the future are just going to be amazing and a big bonus to the American farmer.
Tommy, coming back to the bushel conversation, if we've got that yield rising, and we've got producers, across a lot of the Corn Belt whose bean crops look okay, do you want to see them unloading some of that risk ahead of harvest?
Well, typically, they sell beans off the combine. The one thing they forget to do is buy them back on paper. And so often they say, I'm just happy with my beans. I had a good crop, I sold them, bring them to the elevator, trains coming, Chinamen will be eating them here in 2-3 weeks. That's what happens. We export a lot of beans, not only to China, but all over the world. And we tend to have that spring-summer rally. We really need to keep an eye on that soybean-corn ratio. Now, of course, we can't change anything for 22, but looking forward, as you go to plant your 23 crop, watch the corn-soybean spread to make good marketing and planting decisions. Of course, fertilizer is going to be a big discussion.
It is. That's a conversation that, oh boy, we've had for a year, and it's going to continue. Tommy, at the top of the show, we mentioned the economy, the conversations from Jerome Powell, the recession fears. I'm curious, are we seeing those thoughts spill over into the cattle market?
We are, and there's some things that are going to happen in meats here that could be really interesting. You have to look to Germany and Europe when you see electricity prices went up tenfold. We take electricity not for granted, but it's just something that's affordable. And so what type of business is going to be able to operate when their expenses go up tenfold? And electricity is used, they're trying to raise protein all over the world, and Europe has a real problem. They're going to have a problem heating homes. They're going to have a problem raising animals. Look to America for great demand for the next few years.
Do you see U.S. protein exports to Europe climbing here over the next couple of years?
I'm no expert on U.S. on how much pork goes to Europe, but I can tell you this. If I had a child who was studying overseas in Europe, in Germany, I'd bring him home for the winter. It's going to be ugly over there, my friend.
I think that's a good point. Tommy, what else are you watching here as we go into the weekend?
Well, let's keep our fingers crossed that we finish this crop up good. There's still folks who could benefit by a rain, and of course, just mental health and safety and getting physically fit as we go into a long harvest.
That's a great point. Got to keep healthy all the way around. Tommy Grizzoffi from ATI.
Chad Colby's look at agriculture technology comes your way next, brought to you by the IBM Watson Decision Platform, combining AI with Internet of Things data to help agribusiness increase yields, improve quality, and drive sustainability. For his technology segment this week, Chad Colby is joining us here, along with Mr. Pearson and myself. You've walked this show from one side to the other, I'm sure.
Absolutely, Max. It's exciting to see a lot of this iron, for the first time. There's such a low inventory that for a lot of producers I talk to, it's kind of the first chance they get to see the equipment, let alone the new stuff, just the existing material as well.
What is really interesting is the geography from which folks across the United States attend this show. I've had people from Oregon to Delaware, and I think as far, certainly down to Texas, who've come up to me at this show, and they traveled across several states to be here simply because of the latest things they want to see, many of which you've talked about.
Well, I think when you talk about technology, we like to talk about the new stuff, the stuff that's out there a few years, and there's certainly lots of great examples, but the practical side of agriculture, it's the stuff that the guys can take home to their farm is what really gets my curiosity, because some of these guys will literally take some of these ideas and take them right back to the farm.
So what ideas were on display in 2022, Chad, that jumped out to you?
One of them just really jumped at me. Yetter showed a new, basically their row tillage, but they've made a little change to it that makes it work great in high speed, something that's always been a problem. So the row tillage throwing too much material, their engineers actually made a small change which made a huge difference in that. It's those little things you look at that might fix the problem that guys have been facing.
Since you mentioned tillage, you talk so much about the planter and planter improvements, and rightly so. But it seems like we have advanced ages, eons, if you will, in tillage equipment, and the ability for that tillage tool to adjust going across the field, to adjust to a prescription, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. In the Case IH booth, Max, they got a great example that, remember, we're managing so much more residue in our fields today than my dad did and my grandpa did. And it takes a lot more than just horsepower up front. It takes some sophistication in tillage. And there's a lot of examples of equipment here that weren't here 10 years ago.
And if they can size that residue down to the right size, maybe it can help prevent erosion and prepare that seed bed for the next season. Thank you, sir, for sharing some thoughts with us.
Absolutely, Max.
There we go, Chad Colby. Not just talking about planters this week, not just talking about tractors, but tillage also. Welcome back to This Week in Agribusiness. One stop we wanted to make here at the Farm Progress Show at Boone was at Big Iron. And here he is, Mr. Big Iron himself, Mark Stott. Well, wait just a minute here. I'm looking at a Big Iron shirt and a Sullivan Auctioneer's cap.
Yes, earlier this past month, we made the announcement of the partnership between Big Iron and the Sullivan Auctioneer Group out of Illinois. So we're very excited to have another quality group of salesmen and women and support staff now giving the sellers and bidders and buyers across the country the best of both of us.
Mark, that seems like a win-win all the way around. Really a reputable firm, well-known, highly respected folks.
Very well-known, and they do an outstanding job with their customer service side of the business, as does the Big Iron folks. So it's a marriage that was mirrored. They look at each other, and we're very similar in process and in the way we treat the sellers and the bidders and the buyers. So a very smooth transition. We're excited about all the auctions that are coming forth here over the next couple of months and into 2023.
We keep watching these reports on land values, expecting them to really not only plateau, but maybe taper off some. What are you experiencing? What are you seeing?
Well, as of right now, we have seen maybe a leveling off, unless you have one of those rarefied, top-producing soils, then, Katie bar the door because they're all coming. But with interest rates, eventually that does have a little bit of an impact. But the majority of the land sales we have right now, Max, a lot of the folks are still coming to the dance with cash. So they're not borrowing money, so that interest rate really isn't affecting them. But it does affect the young folks that want to try to expand their operation. And but there's a lot of opportunity out there, and there's different things here and there and everywhere that bidders and buyers can jump into at the time arises. But the thing about the Big Iron and Sullivan websites, there's a lot of land being moved right now. There's a large population of folks that have hit that baby boomer age, and they may have passed away and they've turned it over to their family. And those family members are some of them are cashing out. So there's just a lot of land available.
What's the buyer profile, the typical buyer profile? What percentage are actually farmers?
They're still, the majority of them are still farmers. But they're coming up creeping fast with those folks that have the 401k money coming out at age 59 and a half, and they have no confidence in the stock market. So they're rolling their money into something they can see and touch and watch appreciate over time.
Some of the exchanges, 1031 exchanges still going on, even for people selling out of businesses that aren't agriculture.
Well,
correct?
that's actually happening for the family members that have a partnership of 3 or 4 family members, and they sell what they own together. And then some of them are rolling that money into buying something for their own family to start their own legacy and pass on to their children.
What is a real important attribute other than the soil type when these folks are looking to buy a farmland? Let's say it's somebody outside of agriculture. They're coming in. Drainage is still crucial, is it not?
It's very crucial, but location, location, and location max is still very important. A lot of people are buying in an area where they grew up at because they know the family that they'll rent it to if they're not an actual end user farmer. So the location where it's at is still sentimental and dear to a lot of people. They recognize the names on the plat map. They remember their grandpas and their dads and their aunts, you know, talking and going to play cards and going to the ball games on Saturday night. So they go back to their roots when they want to add land to their operations, and that's fun to watch see happen.
I can imagine it is. Do you also find folks who say, I want to go out and visit this piece of the planet that I own. I want to go out and hunt it and fish it and to take my family out there?
Yeah, the hunting is extremely important, but remember the people that like to go hunting, they also want a return on their investment. So if there's a nice patch of land that's got some good cropland with income producing potential, and they still have them 4 or 5 or 10 acres of trees along a tree line where they can go get that 30-point buck, they're all in.
What do you say to somebody who says, yeah, you know, maybe I could buy this land, get a quick appreciation on it, sell it, resell it again soon, not far down the road? That's not so likely, is it?
You know, the land is usually a long-term investment, so to speak. It's kind of something that you look at over a longer period of time. And yeah, there's an opportunity, I suppose, if you're at the right place at the right time and you get something bought privately where you might take advantage of an opportunity to flip it, so like a house, so to speak. But we're talking a lot bigger dollars, so a lot of times that doesn't happen every day.
What do you say to someone who says, you know, we watched this movie over the years. We've seen the values climb substantially, and then we've seen them pull back. Are we primed to see some kind of retracement here, Mark, from your experience?
Well, the economist always says that happens, and yes, we have seen that happen. You know, we've seen it coming out of the 2008 and 9 year when everything kind of back down, and then people were just waiting. And there wasn't a lot of land that gets sold once the price retraces either. But I think it's a little different now because we got the large population of baby boomers that are exiting agriculture, and maybe they want to sell that farm and divvy up cash instead of divvying up farmland. Because, you know, we could talk all day long about the other subject is when somebody passes away and they give it to the kids, and if it's not done quite right, now the kids usually don't even talk to each other anymore. That's a whole nother conversation for another 3-hour TV program. But right now, the land that's being on the market, being sold, is something that everybody's looking for because of the availability and the time that's taking place right now.
So for the hand wringers that are worried about a bubble that is formed here, perhaps exploding at some point, you're not so concerned about that right now.
Never say never, but the possibility exists. If we go up another percent and a half on interest rates, that's obviously going to cure a lot of enthusiasm.
That will make a difference, won't it?
It will make a difference.
In many markets, not just land.
Correct. We'll see that in machinery, we'll see that in land, we'll see that in a lot of things if that comes into play, and they're talking like it might.
We sure appreciate the chance to visit with you all the time, sir. Thank you, and your contributions each week, giving us a feel for what's happening in the market on This Week in Agribusiness.
Hey, glad to do it, Max. Thank you.
Take care. Mark Stock, Big Iron, and Sullivan. You know both of those names, and they're in partnership together now, by all means. You'll hear more about them in the future, to be sure. There's more coming up on this weekend's This Week in Agribusiness. This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry, is brought to you by Case IH. Welcome back to this weekend's edition of This Week in Agribusiness. Coming from Boone, Iowa, wherever you are across America, we're glad you're with us this weekend. Mr. Mike Pearson and I have come to the Farm Progress Show again. I don't know about you, pal. I've been here many times.
I know you have, Max, and I'm glad to be back in Boone at the Farm Progress Show. Was here in 2020 at the COVID year. It's so great to see these stands packed, the crowds here, and everybody looking at equipment again.
You know, you can sense that feeling among the folks attending, too. And folks from every state in America, well, almost. I mean, you go through the parking lots and you look at the license plates and you find it remarkable. The distances people travel, not just from across the United States, but Canada and even outside the North American continent.
That's absolutely true. I've had the chance to check in with several international visitors who are really excited to be back at Farm Progress, Max. A lot of you remember COVID really upended international travel, and that certainly impacted their trips to come to the Farm Progress show. A lot of these folks are repeat visitors year in and year out, and they're glad to be back to see what developments have come in the world of agriculture. Throughout my conversations here, I talked to Luciano da Silva, a regular visitor who hasn't been since COVID. He was glad to be back.
After those years that we have been closed, we have been impossible to come because the borders were closed. So we are very happy to be here this year. So many things was developed, like the independent tractors, displaying. It's a lot of technology that will help everybody, every farmer. We will help the environment. We help to increase the money that will be in the pocket of our producers.
Well, my first time was for holidays. I was 11 years old in 1986, but then I came for business purposes since 2002.
And what do you watch for when you come to Farm Progress? What are you trying to see to bring back to Argentina?
Well, even though I'm the sales manager of a company, I'm also an agronomist. So, you know, what I see in US, that it's the main corn producer in the world. They have a lot of technology, and is really, for me, very interesting to see where the technology is going through and what can we do with our planters as we are manufacturers. What can we adapt in our machines to improve, you know, the efficiency and the profitability of the crops.
To see the new things that are coming in the industry, and we were invited by AGCO, an agriculture company, so that we're here for 4 days.
So you're here for 4 days, up from Sonora, Mexico. What crops do you guys grow in Sonora?
Wheat, corn, soybean, and some alfalfa hay.
How are the crops looking this year? Have you guys had enough rain?
We have had a good year. Talking about raining, we are just working the land. We start seeding in December and November of this year.
Yields were good. Did you get a good harvest last year?
We did. The prices were really good. That was a good year in Mexico.
Well, looking forward to seeing you next year at the Farm Progress Show, and, you know, enjoying the exhibition. It's really a very nice exhibition.
Fernando mentioned he's been here many, many times before, and he's certainly looking forward to coming back, and I heard that from a lot of international visitors. They liked what they saw. They're excited to bring this technology back home and put it to work on their operation.
Greg Solier now brings us his farm weather forecast for the week ahead, presented by Pivot Bio Proven 40. Predictable, productive, weatherproof. Turn to a better nitrogen. Turn to Pivot Bio Proven 40. Learn more at pivotbio.com. Greg Solier is going to cover the weather for us right now, and we'll take a look at what may be some warm days in some parts of the country for the beginning of September here. What do you see this week?
Oh, my friend, it's hot. It's going to be hot. It's record-setting heat in areas of the western United States. Off the charts type stuff. May we move on to the weather maps and charts. And here it is, first into the Pacific Northwest. Now, yes, welcome to September, by the way, meteorological autumn. And it's anything but an autumn look and feel, even out across that part of the country. Black Hills to the northern Rockies and southward, we talk about in the weather business, the big, hot ridge of high pressure normally in the plains. Well, the next couple of weeks in some western states and parts of the plains. And if you think it was hot in July, we're going to be shattering probably some record temperatures, all-time record temperatures into the Pacific Northwest for early September. There it is, and there's very little change, although a front is draped into Washington State and Oregon, where there has been some modest drought improvement, mind you, with a couple of showers anticipated there in the mid to late portions of the week. That's triple-digit stuff, by the way, uncharacteristically hot. Again, the Black Hills to Nebraska and westward across the divide into the northern Great Basin. Southwestern states. Now, you think the tropics should be busy in the Atlantic. They normally should be in a La Nina setup. In an El Nino year, well, it's in the Pacific. Well, look at the tropical low out there southwest of California. Meanwhile, it's hot, and the thunderstorms, the monsoon setup has temporarily faded. Here is the headline for next week. It will rain. in Southern California. There'll be flooding in the desert Southwest and West Texas cotton. That cotton in Texas, that's going to become a wash rag, I think, in the coming weeks. So some headlines there in the southwestern sections of the country, Max, as the heat continues on in the Intermountain West.
I'm going to take a close look with you at the heart of the country because I'm wondering about that warmth in Nebraska and whether or not it might stay there for a few days into the Husker harvest days.
I'll tell you from this vantage point, probably 90s expected out there. It should be in the mid to upper 80s this time of the year. It's not quite hot to start the week off, at least relative to what's coming their way. So situated across the high plains and westward and across the Corn Belt, pretty delightful weather to scout the fields coming off some of those hellacious storms through Michigan, Indiana, and Illinois last week. 10 inches of rain, by the way, for the month of August into parts of central Illinois. That takes care of the drought there. The warmth, and usually so for September, bills as far north as just about the Sioux. There on northward, there's the cool air. There is the heat back west of the Red River and the Missouri River. Triple-digit readings in the Nebraska Panhandle and even 90-degree air, Max, into parts of the mid-Mississippi Valley. That's kind of air will push the back 40 to maturity. Minimal rainfall chances, mind you. Some dry time will be appreciated in the central Corn Belt locales. And look at the southern states, including Texas. Again, it's gone literally from a drought to a flood down there into the Rio Grande, central and south Texas. There's another one of those tropical lows that came in off the Gulf, heading on through the mid to late portions of the week. There's that thing coming up through Baja, flooding rainfall, Max, for El Paso, west of the Metroplex, down into the Rio Grande Valley. Otherwise, just plain hot, dry weather on the southern plains.
Some folks along the East Coast saying so long to summer after Labor Day here. What will they see in the week ahead?
Pretty much tranquil weather. If you wanted some hint of autumn in the air, you head up into the northeast, into the northern Great Lakes region. There's just not much going on weather-wise. Again, a good reprieve from the flooding rain and severe in the eastern Corn Belt. The heat back west of the Missouri River, middle to late portions of the week. It will expand northward, 90 to 95-degree air up to the Twins, 90 towards Milwaukee and Chicago. And the only real mention of shower and thunderstorm activity where they do need it, mind you. There's a pretty good drought going on across southern New England, so showers and thunderstorms are forecast there the mid to late portions of the week. Into the southeastern states we go. The wet weather pattern continues on. The tropics and the Atlantic, we could go on another hour about talking about that weather-wise, but just not happening right now. A couple of features in the southwest Atlantic and the Gulf bear watching over the mid to late portions of the weekend. There is one forming up later in the week. Don't think it'll be named, but it'll accentuate the showers and thunderstorms across South Texas. Usual wet weather pattern down through Florida continues on. Watch that system in the southwest Atlantic too.
Greg Solier is back with his extended farm weather forecast for the country, presented by Pivot BioProven 40. Predictable, productive, weatherproof. Turn to a better nitrogen. Turn to Pivot BioProven 40. Learn more at pivotbio.com. We'll gaze a little farther into September here with Greg Solier's help as we take a look at that agriculture weather, and the rain amounts you've put on this map are impressive for some areas.
Yeah, that's right. And these are kind of generalized, if you will. Let's take a look at that precip map. And yeah, 2 to 5, and that comes down in spots all at once in the southwestern parts of the country. It will rain in Southern California, measurably so, Imperial Valley, for example. And that's a tropical system off the Pacific over those cold California current waters. A little system into South Texas, and later in the week into the southwestern Atlantic. Don't think any of these, at least in the Atlantic basin, are named. But yeah, Max, look at these amounts. 1 to 3 easily in the southeast, 3 to 6 in through Texas. Forget about cotton there. And in the southwestern states, those numbers bring you flash flooding. Outside of a little system through the Great Lakes of the northeast of New England, high and dry. Good news for some areas of the eastern Corn Belt. Bad news for everyone back to the west.
I saw quite a bit of heat on your maps previously as we take a look at that week of the 12th. That week of the Grand Island, Nebraska Farm Show Husker Harvest Days, it looks like it could be toasty.
Oh, it will be long lines at the beverage stands there, I'm sure, with readings probably somewhere in the 95-plus degree range. There is that hot ridge. We talk about it in summertime, mid-summertime in June, early July. There it is through the northern and central plains and westward, kind of easing a bit in the western states, but that is a tough go of it. Everything, though, quickly moves to maturity where you've had at least adequate soil moisture in the western Corn Belt. And that's not many locales. A warmth into the eastern states, below average temperatures over the deep south. And there is a recurring wet weather pattern. And there is another tropical system coming into the eastern sections of the Pacific. More downpours for Florida. And the western Atlantic may be a little busy. Winds are not quite conducive to get tropical storms into hurricanes off the African coast. But wet weather up and down the eastern seaboard. Below normal moisture, Max, for much of the heartland.
For the week of September 17th, will that heat expand? Or, well, it looks about the same, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
about the same, maybe a slight westward jog on it, northward into the southern Canadian prairie. I do not see any early frost or freeze, at least for the central and western Corn Belt. Eastern areas could get a cold snap here later the month of September, by the way. That's beyond here. Dependent on a tropical system, by the way, moving up the western Atlantic. Anyways, some cooling into the eastern states. Cloud cover keeps temperatures below average across the deep south. Look at the heat across the northern and central plains, northern and western Corn Belt locales, too, where it is a high and dry and favorable harvest weather pattern. If you are inclined to get something out of the fields out there, wet weather continues on in the southwest, deep south, and southeastern states. Max, autumn begins so the 22nd at 8:04 in the evening of the central time. If the equinox, what do you do?
What do you do?
You let it in.
Okay. Don't laugh. It encourages him. We don't want to encourage this guy. The heat really holds over the heart of the country, it seems, over the Plain States area all through September.
Exactly. That's kind of the thinking here with, again, record and near record setting heat for the northern and central Rockies, high plains areas, temperatures back to normal in the southwestern part of the country, and that persistent tropical flow of moisture and or stuck frontal boundaries of the deep south keeps readings below average there. Up and down the eastern seaboard, we do see a little tug in the jet stream currents in from the north and northwest, so some slight cooling later into October. Yeah, I think that's a little more realistic for some frost and freeze, as you would expect for the time of year there. And here it is, wet weather up and down the eastern seaboard. That big red low and the tropical low could get together, and hence a change in the steering currents, but there is welcome wet weather for the northeast of New England. For the drier reaches in the southeastern states, it's getting too wet. Delta region, Texas, and in the southwestern states, and again, pretty favorable. Not great news from a dryness and drought standpoint, but good news from a harvest standpoint across much of the Corn Belt, especially eastern sections. Normal precipitation in California. Some welcome moisture buying you in the Pacific Northwest.
Next on This Week in Agribusiness, it's Max's Tractor Shed, spotlighting another great American tractor.
Sometimes we get in a streak when we feature tractors on Max's Tractor Shed, and that's the case this weekend. It's very possible every now and then we'll have several red tractors week after week after week. Several John Deere green ones, maybe Oliver Green, J.I. Case, but a viewer in California, in Los Angeles, took me to task a few weeks back, and he said, why is it we never see Alice Chalmers on there? So I paid attention to what Dick was asking, and I think this is the third weekend in a row we're featuring Alice Persian Orange, from one we saw here at this year's Farm Progress Show. Max's Tractor Shed is brought to you by Store Lock Tool Cabinets. They are made to last. They guarantee those cabinets for 55 years, which the owner of Store Lock has calculated to be roughly the amount of time that someone will spend in their working career after getting out of high school using their cabinets, so they'll guarantee them for 55 years. Go online to take a look at the configurations they have, the colors that they have, all different colors, not just John Deere and International, but even Alice Chalmers Orange. Go to their website, storelock.com, to see what they have to offer. Then their telephone number is there. Give them a call and visit with them about your needs. You can upgrade your shop dramatically in one fell swoop. Well, Alice Chalmers Orange certainly is in the spotlight this week, and I heard a couple of Alice stories while I was at the Farm Progress Show. One gentleman was telling me about his granddad's tractor that came out in Alice Chalmers Green, and they think that was the original color way back when, and it was converted then to Alice Chalmers Orange in later years. We'll feature that one in coming weeks. But here's a fairly common tractor, an Alice Chalmers WD, made in 1951. Eugene Pohl of Yale, Iowa, owns this tractor. He owned it, I should say. He put it in the auction of Big Iron. Let's get our weekly Big Iron report right now.
Well, Max, we just come off a great show at the Farm Progress venue in Boone, Iowa, and we have talked to a lot of people about their retirement sales this fall. We do have a huge auction September the 7th with over 3,050 items selling. The John Davies retirement sale in Lebo, Kansas features 52 items, including a Vermeer 605 XL net wrap round baler. Jim Eshelman is retiring from Erickson, Nebraska. He's got a John Deere 1750 8-row 30 Max Emerge planter with liquid fertilizer. and he's got a 2016 Caterpillar 242D skid steer. By Beatrice, Nebraska, Alvera Bade is retiring. They've got 54 items. A 2001 International 4900 Series tandem axle grain truck with a steel box and hoist. They've got a 1999 John Deere 7210 tractor with 2,795 hours. They've got a super sharp 1989 John Deere 6620 Titan 2 side hill combine and a John Deere 2510 tractor with a cab. We have some late model construction equipment also selling on September the 7th. Just a great lineup of ag, construction, and transportation equipment selling to the highest bidder. Go to bigiron.com and sullivanauctioneers.com for all the latest information.
Well, this week in Agribusiness is always proud to salute the young leaders coming up through agriculture, particularly those in FFA. And here at the Farm Progress Show, there's no shortage of young folks learning about the technology of agriculture. And I'm here with Ashley Lusink. She is an FFA member of Missouri Valley, Iowa. Ashley, what year are you in school?
I am a senior.
You're a senior, and how long have you been in FFA?
This will be my second year.
Second year in FFA. What prompted you to join?
So I have a friend that's in FFA, and she kind of mentioned, oh, you should join FFA. So I went and checked it out, and it sounded really, really cool, especially the opportunities with animal science and vet experience and horse judging and all that kind of stuff.
So is that something that is an interest of yours, a passion you're trying to develop through FFA?
Yes. Animals are my passion. I've loved them ever since I was born, and I'm trying to decide whether I want to do veterinary medicine or do stuff with equine.
And has FFA been able to help you find some opportunities to work with horses or with animals?
Yes, actually it has. Especially at state convention, I was able to connect with a college that has a really good equine program, Ellsworth Community College. And so I was able to talk to them, and they were telling me, you get a lot of experience in the barn. It's not just like a bunch of studies and then like you get a little bit of experience. It's a lot of hands-on, hard work, but I love hard work.
And I understand you have been working into leadership in your FFA chapter. What position do you hold, Ashley?
I am the secretary.
And what is the role of the secretary at the chapter level?
So we pretty much just make sure we take notes on officer meetings, chapter meetings, anything like that, so that we have documentation in case like we forget, oh, we agreed on this decision, and it shows too, if people are ever to question that, what we're doing. So documentation.
Documentation is so important. Look out to the future with me, Ashley. What do you want to do? Do you want to stay involved in agriculture?
Yes, I do. I would love to stay involved in agriculture.
What capacity? What would you like to be doing?
I would like to work with horses. Actually, I'm considering horse breeder, but I'd also like to raise cattle, sheep, goats, a menagerie of animals.
Just love that livestock.
Yes, I do.
Well, we wish you the absolute best of luck. Ashley Lusink from Missouri Valley, good luck in your senior year at FFA.
Thank you.
Welcome back to This Week in Agribusiness. Max, one crop under focus right now is the canola crop.
As we're watching oil seeds in general rather closely, they're going to keep an eye on the canola harvest to be sure. And our friend Al Guston has watched the advance of that crop across North Dakota as it's matured this summer.
This field of canola was blooming brightly on June 30th, a splash of yellow among the green-hued fields of corn and soybeans, wheat and barley. June 30th is when the U.S. Department of Agriculture issued its planted acreage report. With tight supplies of old crop canola, industry officials wondered about canola acreage in 2022.
We were expecting about 2 million acres in North Dakota, given the run-up in prices that we had last year. But we had 250,000 acres of PP, or prevent plants. So we would have probably hit that 2 million acre figure if we had not had the really wet weather that we had this spring.
North Dakota produces about 85% of the nation's canola.
Good growth in a lot of other states. Montana's got a lot of canola. They're growing a lot more in Idaho, Washington, Oregon.
And nationally?
It will be up just slightly from last year, from 2.1 to 2.2 million acres.
The vegetable oil market, Coleman said, was bidding for acres. This bottle of vegetable oil illustrates an important fact about that market. This is a blend of canola, sunflower, and soybean oil. To a certain extent, these oils can be substituted for each other based on availability and price. Right now, canola is benefiting from a big demand for soybean oil, a demand not coming from the food industry.
Right now, 44% of the diesel used in California is biodiesel or renewable diesel. And soy oil is the main component or feedstock for that. And so the amount of soy oil used for food use is predicted to decrease in the U.S. in the coming 20 years, and the amount of canola oil for food use is predicted to fill that gap.
That will take more acres. What ethanol has done for corn, renewable diesel is doing for soybeans. And the hope is that soon renewable diesel will be made from soybean oil or sunflower oil or canola oil or a blend of all three.
In the oilseed sector, it's just incredible what we're seeing going forward for the next 20 years.
A future as bright as this field of canola at the end of June. For This Week in Agribusiness, I'm Al Gustin.
We appreciate Al Gustin's report. They've gone through some challenges in agriculture in that part of the world with some very dramatic swings in weather. As you know, Mike, watching what's happening with crops across the country.
Certainly caught up with Doug Goring from North Dakota, and they have faced troubles up there this past year.
We'll be in a state in a few days that has had a very, very dry summer. We're going to Nebraska for Husker Harvest Days. And of course, if you get out away from those center pivots, you get in those corners and other parts of the state, the yield prospects have been diminished rather significantly.
They have. I've heard that from a lot of Nebraska growers, but that's why the irrigation's so important in that part of the state, and that's what makes it so important at Husker Harvest Days, Max.
Yeah, we'll be there, and we hope you'll join us. Grand Island, Nebraska. We'll be here next weekend on This Week in Agribusiness, ahead of going to Grand Island for that show the 13th through the 15th. Thanks a lot. Have a great week. So long, everyone. Closed captioning for This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Kubota. Shape your world. This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Case IH. This Week in Agribusiness is produced by Omax Communications in association with 22 Creative Group. We invite you to visit us online at agbizweek.com.